They say food brings people together, like last night's dinner. But when those people are politicians and the voters they're trying to win over, often the opposite is true. Just ask Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, one of the many Democrats running for president in 2020, who faced an onslaught of criticism for the way she ate fried chicken during a recent campaign stop in South Carolina. CNN reporter Jasmine Wright, who's following the campaign, tweeted, "The food is served. Gillibrand starts to eat her fried chicken with a fork. She looks around, sees other people eating with their hands, and says, Kiki, do we use our fingers or forks for the chicken?" Kiki said to use her fingers, and use her fingers she did. Apparently not soon enough, though. But Gillibrand is just the latest in a long line of politicians who put their fork in their mouth, so to speak, like NYC Mayor Bill DeBlasio, Ohio Governor John Kasich, Citizen Trump back in 2011, who all committed the heinous crime of eating pizza with utensils, or cheesesteak offenders like former Secretary of State John Kerry, who ordered, get this, Swiss instead of Cheese Whiz in my hometown of Philadelphia. Not to mention the time President Obama ate his ice cream cone with a spoon. What's the cone for? Or the last time last year, Mitt Romney said his favorite meat is hot dog, whatever that is. Yes, for politicians on the campaign trail, it seems like catastrophe is always on the menu. Joining me to discuss is Fred Opie. Fred's a professor of history and foodways at Babson College. He's taught a class on the intersection of food and politics. Fred, it's great to see you.
Jim, great to see you again.
Why does what the candidate eats and how he or she eats it, why does it matter?
So the big deal here is authenticity. Are you part of my community? Do you get me? Do you understand me? Are we from the same social class? Or if we're not, do you understand my social class and our values?
So, wait a second. But if you go and eat, let's assume, for example, Kirsten Gillibrand had not only had fried chicken at Kiki's, but eaten it like a normal human being. All of a sudden, people in South Carolina are going to say, aha, she gets me. Is that enough to create a bond, you think?
I think it was too late. The fact that you had to ask your handler, how do I eat this? It's over. You might as well move on to the next state that you might be able to capture some influence.
Now, when by the way, I am from Philadelphia, as I said before, and the cheesesteak places are legendary. Everybody goes to Gino's or the other one down there. How big a deal was the Swiss thing? To me, it said it all. And maybe because I was a Philly boy, but how big a deal was that?
I think it's big. It all comes back to, are you one of us? And you may not be from our community, but you still understand when you meet somebody, are you cool? Do you represent my political views and my culture?
So has a food faux pas, for lack of a better expression, ever cost anybody an election in your estimation? Because I know of one that I've read about. Gerald Ford, the great tamale incident.
Would it cost you? The thing is, the races are so tight now, whether it's a Senate race or presidential race, I don't think you can afford that. You can't afford a miss-up.
So what do you think about the great tamale incident? This is when it is unbelievable. The guy ate the outside of a tamale. Gerald Ford didn't realize you're supposed to take it off. Now, a lot of people I've read say that he lost Texas as a result. You don't buy it.
I don't know. And that one, I can understand. I give him a little bit more flexibility. For fried chicken, pizza with knife and fork, I mean, come on. You're just showing that you are a very elitist person.
So let me go. One of my favorite moments, you may not even remember this, despite the fact you teach this, is someone who realized how important the stakes were, and I don't mean that as a pun. John Kerry, in 2004, he's running for president. He's doing an interview, I think at a restaurant, a wine place, whatever, with GQ. And the person says, the reporter says, are you a Bordeaux or a Burgundy guy? And here's classic John Kerry. Just as politically, I don't like to be categorized. I don't like to be categorized with wine. It depends on what I'm doing, what I'm eating. He won't even answer the question. And I assume because he gets what you get, your choices matter to a certain piece of the population, no?
Look, I would say being long-winded is probably just as bad as eating with the wrong utensil.
Yeah, but that's not a food problem. That's how you relate. Okay, here you mentioned the word authenticity a couple of minutes ago. I would argue that is the critical issue vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton with the hot sauce thing. For those who didn't see this thing, the Breakfast Club radio show, they asked Hillary Clinton, this is when she's running for president, what's in her bag, and here's what happened.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now, listen,
yes.
I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to black people.
Okay. Is it working?
You know, it turns out afterwards, when I saw this thing, I said, talk about pandering. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. But then people who follow her say she does eat a hot pepper a day. She does carry this, but it didn't come off as authentic, even though it was, no?
Because I think her personality, whether we like it or not, it's who she was. It was a little bit cold. And so when you do that and you're her, it doesn't necessarily come off. Bill Clinton could do the same thing, would come off fine, even though there might be some problems with voters in him.
So that does get back to the authenticity. It's not just the food and what you're eating, but how you eat it. You know, talk about Donald Trump for a second. We all know that a couple of weeks ago, the Clemson National Football Champions were there, fast food. I think North Dakota State, which may be Division III or something, had the same situation today. Now, you might say that what does Donald Trump call them, undereducated voters or whatever he called on the campaign trail. You know, the average person in America eats a lot of fast food, probably much more than they should. But does anybody think that Donald Trump can relate to that average person because he likes a Big Mac and a filet of fish?
Jim, I hate to say this, but whether we like it or not, he has been a wonder of connecting with people through symbols like food. The guy gets it, and he pulls it off, and it's one of the reasons why people who have nothing economically associated with him think he's one of their own.
So this is so odd. So Donald Trump, who I think most people would, objective people would say, is probably not one of their own, but he has a Big Mac, so he becomes one. Elizabeth Warren, who in many ways is a working class hero, she does this Facebook Live thing. I think it's on the day that she actually declared. Remember the whole beer incident in her kitchen? Watch this.
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer. Hey, Robert, my husband Bruce is now in here. You want a beer?
No, I'll pass on the beer for now.
You sure? Okay, say hello to folks.
Yes.
So, this is my sweetie.
Hello.
Who've we got here so far? Skylar, and 14 others.
So here's what I need you to explain to me. She is probably, I know the bar she goes to in her neighborhood, and it's a dump, by the way. She is likely to have a beer, like, I don't know if she'd say, get me a beer, but everybody ridiculed her, including me. Donald Trump, who is not likely to relate to the average person in a real way, has a cheeseburger, and all of a sudden, he's one of us. How do you explain that to me?
I think her past as a Harvard professor, you know, that she's got that elitist, the same thing Barack Obama had, being a Harvard grad. You know, nobody associates Donald Trump with a high level of education. I don't mean that in a demeaning way.
I understand that.
But he also understands the symbols. You got to work the symbols. That's what food and events are about.
Okay, so when you give up this academic thing and you decide to start consulting with presidential candidates.
By the way, I'm available.
What's the primary advice? I know it's person, but what's the primary advice you'd give such a person?
So I used the word handler earlier in the interview. You have to find somebody who understands the local community you're going to. They're going to know the best places. They're going to know how to order. Have them either show you how to order and make sure you understand even how to eat. You're being a Philly cheesesteak guy. I understand in some places in Philly, they'll throw you off the line if you don't order the right way. You have to have somebody who understands. Just the way Anthony Bourdain or Andrew Zimmern would go out in the field, they have a handler who knows the local area. You can't presume you know local people.
I think you have a future in this consulting business, Fred. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks so much.